Bang! The wine glass shook. The next moment, my son-in-law's hand came across my face in a hard slap. Instead of the smell of steak on the grill, all I could taste was humiliation and anger. I had endured and I had crumbled, but that day, for the first time, I whispered to myself, I cannot go on like this. When I lifted my head, I saw a small red light blinking in the corner of the ceiling. The CCTV that I would cling to until the very end. How this old woman, who was told she had nothing, made it all the way here. I will tell you that story now. You're listening to Silver Story Tree, where the voices of life's late chapters gently bloom again. Subscribe, like, and turn on the bell to hear more heartfelt stories that grow with time. The moment I opened the restaurant door, the smell of grilling meat and the sound of laughter rushed at me all at once. It was a family steakhouse next to a mall on the outskirts of Seattle. Always crowded on Friday evenings. I tugged at the sleeves of my worn cardigan as I walked toward the round table. My daughter Lauren, my son-in-law Michael, and my in-law Patricia were already seated. Patricia swirled her wine glass and brought up the topic. Michael had signed a contract for a new house in Tacoma, she said. All I needed to do was co-sign the loan. I gripped my water glass tightly and answered carefully. My credit wasn't strong, and I had almost nothing saved up. I reminded them I'd already put everything into their apartment deposit years ago. That's when Michael slammed his fork down. His expression hardened, and he asked me a question. Evelyn, if you can't even help with this much, what was the point of working your whole life? A birthday song floated over from a nearby table, but I couldn't hear any of it. My ears felt muffled, and my heart pounded. Patricia added with a sneer. Honestly, why are you so stubborn when you don't have anything anyway? I tried to slowly stand up from my seat. I didn't want to be there anymore. But Michael jumped up and approached me. He told me not to hold them back. I had nothing anyway, he said. With those words, his palm struck my cheek hard. The slap echoed loudly. The wine glasses on the table rattled, and every eye in the room turned toward me. My cheek stung and burned. A ringing sound filled my ears. I slowly turned my head. At the edge of my vision, I spotted a CCTV camera in the corner of the ceiling. A small red light blinked. In that moment, strangely enough, I heard something snap inside my heart. Lauren grabbed my arm in a panic. Mom, are you okay? She asked. I didn't answer. I just stared straight at Michael. He avoided my eyes and sat back down. Patricia dabbed her mouth with a napkin and turned her head, as if nothing had happened. When we left the restaurant and stood in the parking lot, cold wind brushed against my cheek. It hurt, not just my cheek, but deep in my chest. But that day, I realized something for the first time. Enduring doesn't make things better. And a small voice inside me spoke. It's okay to stop enduring now. I need to protect myself. I got on the bus and looked out the window. The restaurant sign grew distant. I cupped my cheek with my hand and thought. Nothing? No. I still have my name. I still have my face. I still have my voice. And today, the evidence of what happened was captured by that camera in the corner. I won't stay silent anymore. Early dawn. The low hum of the boiler rumbled. Footsteps echoed from upstairs, and someone opened a door in the hallway. I stood in the darkness of my small kitchen in the basement apartment in Tacoma, brewing coffee. A faint dawn light seeped through the window. Back when I worked at the diner, I'd already be wearing my apron and standing in the kitchen at this hour. I loved that quiet time before customers arrived. No one bothered me, and I could create something with my own hands. My eyes landed on Lauren's nursing school graduation photo on the wall. She was smiling brightly in her white uniform. That day, Lauren had squeezed my hand and said, Mom, I'm going to take care of you from now on. I believed her. Or rather, I wanted to believe her. On the counter sat last month's rent notice and credit card bills stacked on top of each other. There was a receipt showing I'd barely made the minimum payment. I muttered to myself while looking at those papers. I had something too. Your tuition, your wedding, your first apartment deposit. But those words fell into empty air. When I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, a faint red mark still remained on my cheek. I touched it lightly and winced. I looked at my face in the mirror and tears came. In 68 years of living, I never thought I'd be hit by someone especially not by my son-in-law. A knock came at the door. It was Martha from next door. When I opened it, Martha asked with a worried expression, "What happened? Your face looked strange yesterday." Instead of answering, I just gripped my mug tightly. But my lips trembled, and eventually, tears burst out. "Michael hit me," I told her. "At the restaurant. In front of people." Martha's eyes widened as she spoke. "That's not a family matter, that's assault. And that restaurant definitely has CCTV running." CCTV. The word rang clearly in my ears. I looked at Martha and asked, "Evidence?" Martha nodded. "Even if you're weak, evidence is strong," she said. Those words struck my heart. I had no power, no money, no education. But I realized then that evidence doesn't lie. Martha took my hand and spoke. "Don't endure this time. You've endured your whole life, so now it's time to protect yourself." I nodded. The sun was rising outside the window. Through the old basement window, light was faintly creeping in. I watched that light and thought, maybe this light could enter my life too. Maybe I could change from a mother who endures to a mother who acts. After that day, I decided I wouldn't step back anymore. The next afternoon, I took the bus back to that steakhouse. Rain-soaked roads on the outskirts of Seattle passed by the window. I saw big box store signs, gas stations, and fast food restaurants. The bus was quiet, and I looked down at the notepad in my hand. It was a list of questions Martha had written for me. When I opened the restaurant door, my heart pounded. Lunch had just ended, so there weren't many customers. I told a staff member I wanted to see the manager. A middle-aged man came out shortly after. He asked what this was about. I spoke with a trembling voice. 3 nights ago, on Friday night, my family hit me here. I hadn't called the police, but I asked if I could see the footage. The manager looked uncomfortable. "We can only provide that to the police," he said. But he paused and added something. "The footage is kept for a week. And we'd like to encourage you to file a report." I nodded and thanked him. That was enough. Just knowing the footage existed was enough. I left the restaurant and met up with Martha. She was sitting on a bench looking at her smartphone. She'd found a free legal aid clinic for seniors, she said. It was near City Hall. We took another bus downtown. The legal clinic was on the 2nd floor of an old building. I held the handrail tightly as I climbed the stairs. In the narrow waiting room, several other people were sitting besides us. They all looked worn down. I wasn't any different from them. When they called my name, I went into the consultation room. A young female lawyer greeted me. She smiled and told me to take my time. I explained everything from the beginning, step by step. My daughter's marriage, my son-in-law's loan demands, the assault at the restaurant. The lawyer took notes and asked, "Did you get confirmation that CCTV footage exists?" I nodded. The lawyer said if an active police officer hit his mother-in-law, internal affairs won't just let it slide. Having video and audio recordings would be even better. Recording. My heart sank at that word. I'd never recorded anything before. The lawyer explained, "You can record calls when you're a party to the conversation. If your son-in-law contacts you again, record it then," she advised. When I got home, I hesitated for a long time. Should I call Michael? But Martha said something from beside me. "Let him think you're weak. That's when his true colors come out." I picked up my phone with trembling hands. I found Michael's name and pressed the call button. The ringing tone sounded twice, and he answered. "Hello?" His voice was irritated. I quietly pressed the record button. Then I asked calmly, "Do you remember hitting me that day?" Michael chuckled. "Hardly even worth calling it hitting," he said. "I was just trying to establish some family dignity." He continued, "Honestly, you have nothing anyway. Who would believe you?" I didn't answer. I just listened quietly, because I knew his voice was being recorded. After I hung up, I looked down at my phone screen. The recording file was there. When I pressed play, Michael's voice came through clearly. "Hardly worth calling it hitting. You have nothing." Those words were preserved exactly as he'd said them. My chest grew hot. There was anger, but more than that. It felt like I was holding something solid in my hands. Martha patted my shoulder. "You did well," she said. "This is just the beginning." That night, Martha and I sat at my old kitchen table. On the laptop screen was the Seattle Police Department. Internal Affairs complaint page. The cursor blinked in the complaint box. I placed my hands on the keyboard. Martha asked if I could do this. I nodded. I was hit while being told I had nothing. So now I had to use what little I have. And I slowly began typing. I started putting my story, my voice, my dignity onto that screen. A few days later, Martha and I stood in front of the Seattle Police Department headquarters building. I could see the tall glass exterior and the American flag waving on its pole. When we entered, there was a metal detector. And a security guard checked our bags. I was so nervous I could barely breathe. Internal Affairs was on the 3rd floor. When the elevator doors opened, I saw gray walls and fluorescent lights. As I walked down the corridor, I could hear my own heartbeat. When we stood at the office door, Martha squeezed my hand. When we entered, a young man stood up to greet us. He introduced himself as Daniel. "Ms. Carter, please take your time," he said. He opened his laptop and offered me a chair. I sat down on shaky legs. Daniel asked me to explain the complaint I'd submitted in my own words. I took a deep breath and began speaking. My daughter's marriage, my son-in-law's loan demands, and being slapped at the restaurant. My voice caught during the telling, but I finished. Daniel listened seriously. He took notes and nodded occasionally. "Do you have evidence?" he asked. I pulled a USB drive from my bag. It contained a confirmation from the restaurant manager about the CCTV storage. And the recording file saved on my phone. Daniel plugged the USB into his computer. He played the recording. Michael's voice filled the office. "Hardly worth calling it hitting. You have nothing anyway. Who would believe you?" The words came through crystal clear. Daniel's face hardened. He stopped the recording and listened again from the beginning. He replayed it 2-3 times while typing notes on his keyboard. I watched him and my heart raced. I couldn't believe someone was taking my words seriously. Daniel looked up at me. "This isn't simply a family dispute," he said. "This is assault by an active police officer and a conduct issue. I'm going to file this complaint as an official case." The strength left my hands. It was relief. I asked with a trembling voice, "Will people believe someone like me?" Daniel smiled quietly and answered, "We'll let the evidence speak. And you're the one who gathered that evidence." Tears welled up in my eyes at those words. When we left the office and stood in the hallway, Martha patted my back. "You did well, this is just the beginning," she said. I looked out the window. I could see downtown Seattle at a glance. Tall buildings, cars moving busily, it all seemed like a world far from me. But today, I had taken one step into that world. As I descended the stairs leaving the building, I muttered to myself, "This is just the beginning. Michael, you thought I was weak, but I learned how to gather evidence." Cold wind brushed my face. My cheek had already healed, but the memory of that day remained vivid. And that memory was no longer breaking me down, but lifting me up. A few weeks passed. One Friday morning, I was back at the Seattle Police Department building. This time in a conference room. With a long table in the middle, people sat facing each other. On one side were Lauren and I, on the other side sat Michael and Patricia. Daniel and another internal affairs officer took their seats and spoke. "Today we'll review the submitted evidence together. And hear everyone's positions. This is a formal interview." I clenched my hands and looked down at the table. The wood grain was clearly visible. Michael began speaking with a relaxed expression. His mother-in-law was very upset. And she seemed to have misunderstood a slight touch as violence. My chest sank. This man was lying again. Patricia nodded beside him in agreement. That's when it happened. The officer picked up a remote and turned on the screen in the conference room. The restaurant's CCTV footage began playing. The table, wine glasses, people came into view. Then Michael stood up and approached me in the footage. His hand moved in a large arc. There was no sound, but Michael's palm striking my cheek hard was clear. I staggered in the footage. The scene of people around us turning to look was captured in its entirety. The conference room fell silent. So silent you couldn't even hear breathing. Lauren covered her mouth with her hand beside me. A small sob escaped. "You call that slight?" she asked in a trembling voice. I squeezed Lauren's hand. Michael's face turned white. Patricia hurriedly changed her story. "We'd had a lot of wine that night, so our memory isn't clear," she said. But the officer shook his head. "Footage doesn't lie," he said. Then Daniel operated his laptop. Sound came from the speaker. My voice came first. Do you remember hitting me that day? Then Michael's voice. Hardly worth calling it hitting. I was just trying to establish some family dignity. His words filled the conference room. And then came the decisive blow. Honestly, you have nothing anyway. Who would believe you? The mocking voice played. Listening to it, my cheek burned again. But this time it wasn't anger, but a strange sense of relief. Because it proved my memory wasn't wrong. The officer spoke. Sergeant Hughes, this isn't simply a family conflict. It's conduct unbecoming of a public servant. And it connects to other complaints already filed. Other complaints? I tilted my head. The officer flipped through documents and explained. There are complaints about traffic stop issues. Statements about accepting gifts in exchange for ticket cancellations. Do you remember? He asked. Michael bit his lip and hung his head. Patricia tried to make excuses. That was just a meal, she started to say. But stopped at the officer's cold stare. In that moment, I realized. Michael hitting me wasn't an accident. He was someone who always looked down on weak people. And used force to suppress them. When I walked out of the conference room, my legs shook. But at the same time, my chest felt hot. I remembered Daniel's words about letting the evidence speak. I had nothing, but the truth was on my side. Beyond the hallway window, the Seattle sky had cleared beautifully. In one interrogation room, I could see Michael through a transparent glass window. His tie loosened and head bowed. He was answering questions from internal affairs investigators. Lauren and I sat on chairs in the hallway watching the scene. The voices through the glass were faint, but Michael's expression was clear. Yes, he admitted to canceling tickets for acquaintances a few times. He'd accepted gifts as expressions of gratitude. Only the sound of pen on paper could be heard regularly. The wall clock ticked away. Listening to that sound, I thought about how time flows equally for everyone. Yet some people fill that time with truth, and others fill it with lies. Michael was the latter. Lauren spoke quietly beside me. Michael always said if he got on his supervisor's bad side, it would be over. That's why he was so obsessed with appearances, she said. He was always anxious about being passed over for promotion. Being looked down on by colleagues. I looked at Lauren and said quietly. Even so, that's no excuse for hitting people or looking down on those with less. Being anxious, being stressed, doesn't give you the right to trample others. Lauren nodded. Her eyes were red. After the interrogation, Michael came out into the hallway alone. He spotted me and stopped. He hesitated, then slowly approached. He called my name. Evelyn. I'm sorry, he said. He'd done wrong, would I please withdraw the complaint? I looked straight at him. And I asked, would you have apologized if you hadn't hit me? Michael couldn't answer. He just looked down and bit his lip. I continued, you told me I had nothing. So I brought out the last thing I had. I came all this way with my name, my face, my age on the line. You can't end this now with just sorry. Michael looked up. His eyes were red. He spoke with a trembling voice. He remembered as a child watching his father being chased by debt collectors. He'd vowed never to return to poverty. It had twisted in the wrong direction. I paused my breathing hearing those words. Michael had his own wounds. But that didn't justify the violence I'd experienced. When wounded people hurt others, it's just the inheritance of pain. Then the Internal Affairs office door opened. Daniel came out to deliver the official decision. Sergeant Michael Hughes would be immediately relieved of duty, suspended, and referred to a disciplinary board for severe sanctions. He was to surrender his police badge immediately. Michael's shoulders slumped. He took his badge from his pocket and handed it to Daniel. The sound of the metal badge passing from hand to hand could be heard faintly. That sound seemed strangely loud. It was the sound of one person's life changing. Walking down the hallway, Lauren grabbed my arm. Mom, are you okay? She asked. I nodded. I'm okay now, I said. My hands still trembled, but my expression was much firmer than before. I was no longer a mother who endures, but a mother who fights. A few weeks later, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. It was marked Seattle Police Department Disciplinary Board Decision. My hands shook, but Martha and I sat on the couch and opened it slowly. The sound of turning pages echoed in the quiet living room. I saw the phrases salary reduction and demotion. Voluntary resignation recommended. There was also a sentence stating the complainant's testimony. and evidence were found highly credible by the Internal Affairs investigation. I read that sentence several times. I couldn't believe it. Martha spoke. This is significant, she said. This is really proper. I nodded and wiped away tears. They were tears of joy. That my words were believed, that my evidence had power, I was so grateful. The lawyer called. Civil action for defamation and assault damages was possible, she said. However, considering my health, reaching a realistic settlement might be better, she advised. I thought about what I wanted. There was something more important than money. I told the lawyer. I wanted the full down payment I'd contributed, returned, and written apologies from both Michael and Patricia with notarization. Then I'd let the rest go. A few days later, we met at a notary office downtown. It was a small but clean office. Documents lay on the desk, and the notary sat in place. Lauren and I arrived first, and soon Michael and Patricia entered. There were no greetings. We simply took our seats. The notary unfolded the documents and read them aloud. We acknowledge causing deep harm to Evelyn Carter through our actions. There was content apologizing sincerely for physical violence and verbal abuse. Michael picked up the pen. I could see his hand trembling. He signed his name on the line. Patricia signed after him. The sound of the notary's stamp rang clearly. Thud, thud. That sound seemed like the sound of an ending. Lauren took a bank check from her bag. This is all the money you contributed, Mom. I took the check. It was just a piece of paper, but I could feel its weight. Not the weight of money I'd saved all my life, but the weight of my dignity. Leaving the notary office, I walked to the building next door. It was an apartment rental office. I'd like to see a one-bedroom with good sunlight in Tacoma, I said. The staff member smiled and showed me several options. I chose an apartment on a hill. It had large windows overlooking mountains and sky. Not a basement, but a place filled with sunlight. The moment I signed the lease, I thought. The sound of signing my own name with my own hand. This is the sound of me protecting myself. I finished signing at the window desk. The staff member handed me the key. It was a small key, but to me, it was the key to a new beginning. When I left the office and stood in the parking lot, wind blew. It wasn't cold, but warm. Lauren took my hand and spoke. Mom, this is really a fresh start. I smiled and answered, yes, this is the beginning. A new life starting at 68. It wasn't too late, I thought. It was just the right time. Several months passed. Winter came, and sunlight streamed through the window of my new apartment. On the Tacoma hilltop, it was brilliant light. Small potted plants Lauren had bought me filled the windowsill, and green leaves sparkled in the light. On a weekend afternoon, Lauren visited. She came holding a cake box. Congratulations on your new home, Mom, she said with a smile. I hugged Lauren and thanked her. We made tea in the kitchen together, and sat side by side on the living room couch. Lauren looked out the window and spoke. Mom, the air here is so good. It's so much brighter than before. I smiled and answered. After not seeing the sky from that basement, now I can see mountains and sky like this. It makes me feel like I'm still alive. News played on the TV. The caption read Seattle police strengthen disciplinary action after internal misconduct discovery. The face was pixelated, but I didn't bother watching more. It was already over. I'd done everything I needed to do. Lauren spoke carefully. Mom, I'm still sorry about not taking your side back then. Her voice trembled. I squeezed my daughter's hand. You were already on my side, I said. I saw your tears at Internal Affairs that day. Lauren wiped her tears. My eyes grew hot too. But they weren't sad tears. They were comforting tears. That mother and daughter could cry together and laugh together. I was grateful for that. We sat holding hands in silence for a while. When evening came and Lauren left, I sat alone by the window. I could see the Seattle night skyline. Lights sparkled. I remembered something my husband once said. You may not have much, but you deserve to live with dignity. At the time, those words had hurt. It bothered me that I didn't have much. But now it sounded different. The right to live with dignity, that was what I truly had. Not money or a house or education. But my dignity was the greatest thing I possessed. I sent Michael one last brief text. If you're truly sorry, please teach your children never to treat people carelessly. I pressed send. Whether he read it or not, only a gray checkmark remained. But my heart felt light. I sat by the window and sipped warm tea. Warmth spread through my mouth. I muttered to myself, if you hadn't slapped me that day, I'd still be living believing I was a woman who had nothing. Thank you, Michael. Because of you, I learned. What I needed to protect until the end wasn't a house or money, but my face, my name, my dignity. And that dignity can't be taken by anyone. Stars appeared in the night sky. 1, 2, 3. Looking at the twinkling stars, I thought, those stars too only shine because there's a dark night. My life was the same. Because there were dark times, now I could recognize shining moments. Watering the plants, I caressed the green leaves. They were growing small but sturdy. I felt I was growing that way too. At 68 years old, I was learning anew and growing anew. I didn't think it was too late. Because now was exactly the right time. Before bed, I looked in the mirror one last time. I saw a wrinkled face, graying hair, tired eyes. But that face looked stronger than before. Because it was a face I had protected. Pulling up the covers and closing my eyes, I spoke in my heart. Evelyn, you did well. You didn't crumble from words. Saying you had nothing, but instead stood up using those words as a stepping stone. You gathered evidence, followed procedures, and never gave up. That was your greatest strength. In the darkness, only the sound of my breathing could be heard. It was steady and comfortable breathing. I felt I could sleep peacefully for the first time in a long while. Even in my dreams, I would be sitting by a window full of sunlight. No longer in a basement, but in a place where I could see the sky. After that day, my life changed. Those words saying I had nothing ended up giving me the greatest gift. Because they helped me rediscover the weight of my dignity. And now I know, the people who truly have nothing are different. They're the ones who treat others carelessly and feel no shame. Everyone, have you ever been deeply hurt by your family's words? Or even their hands, like I was? Through this experience, I learned that even if it looks like we have nothing, we must protect our own dignity and our own name. I realized it late, but I still found the courage to take one small step for myself. If you have gone through something similar, please feel free to share it carefully in the comments. Your courage may become comfort and hope for someone else. If today's story stayed with you, I kindly ask you to subscribe and like so we can keep walking together. If someone comes to mind, please quietly share this video with them. Thank you sincerely for listening to the end, and I truly wish you health and peace in the days ahead.
It was past 2 in the morning, and once again, I was standing beside an older patient who could not stop coughing, watching his chest rise and fall. Every time the emergency room doors opened, cold air rushed in, mixed with that distinctive smell of disinfectant that always hangs in a hospital on a winter night. The patient clutched his chest, coughing in short, harsh bursts and gasping for breath. Next to the bed stood his daughter, wearing a thick jacket, as if she had rushed out of the house, several crumpled tissues in her hand. On those tissues were traces of the phlegm he had been coughing up all night, with thin streaks of blood mixed in. Hello, this is Golden Years Wellness Audio. What you're about to hear is something only those who've truly experienced it can understand. What if the pain you feel right now isn't just a simple symptom, but the final warning your body gives to protect your life? Today's story is based on a real case that changed someone's life. Even now, countless people are missing these warning signs. But you don't have to be one of them. This story may hold the key to protecting your own health. Listen until the end, and don't forget to subscribe and give it a like. Your small act of attention could help save another person's life. I quietly placed my stethoscope on his chest and listened. With every breath in, I heard a rough sound like dry branches scraping against each other, and in between, there were deep bubbling noises, like water boiling somewhere far inside. Each time he took a breath, his belly and chest rose and fell dramatically, and after a fit of coughing, he would close his eyes and spend a few seconds just trying to catch his breath. Before he could speak again, he said to me, "At my age, a bit of coughing is normal, isn't it? Every winter I get like this, so I figured if I just waited, it would get better on its own." His words sounded calm, but I could see his shoulders and hands trembling ever so slightly. His face flushed red whenever he coughed, then quickly turned an ashen color again. It was a sight I had seen many times before, but it was never something I could take lightly. As I listened to him, I found myself asking silently, is this really just because of age? Is it really only because it is winter? Like many others, this gentleman had blamed his cough on aging and his constitution for a long time. The cough that got worse when he lay down at night. The cough that came with shortness of breath after walking just a little. The cough that worsened whenever he ate. He had endured all of it, thinking, this is just how it is at my age, until he finally ended up in the emergency room. And scenes like this are ones I have watched over and over again for decades. But what if this is not just aging, but a signal that his life is in danger? What if the cough that torments you every night is actually the last warning light from your heart and your lungs? If you ignore that signal and push through for a few more days, a few more months, and then suddenly collapse one day, by then it might already be too late. I graduated from Seoul National University College of Medicine, and I have worked as a pulmonologist and emergency physician for 35 years. Even now, in the emergency room and intensive care unit, I see countless older patients every day who come in because of a cough. Some recover quickly from a simple cold, but others dismiss their cough as no big deal, and end up being diagnosed with pneumonia, heart failure, or even cancer. One of the things I hear most often in the clinic is this: "Doctor, I thought it was just because I am getting old. I figured if I waited a few days it would get better, that it would just pass. But I know this much. A cough is one of the strongest signals the body sends to protect itself. Especially when a new cough appears after the age of 60, or when the pattern of a cough changes. We must look for the cause hiding behind it. In this audiobook, I would like to look at coughing not just as a nuisance, but as an important language our body uses to speak to us. I want to slowly unpack what it means when your cough is worse at night, why it gets worse when you lie down and eases a little when you sit up, why it flares up whenever you eat, and what those small differences are trying to tell us about what is going on inside. More importantly, I want to clearly draw the line between the kind of cough you can afford to watch for a while, and the kind of cough where you must say, I cannot wait any longer, and go to the hospital right away. My role is to help you tell which side you or your spouse or your parents belong to. Among those of you listening right now, there may be someone who has been living with a lingering cough for weeks, putting off going to the hospital because you are afraid they might find something serious. There may also be someone who hears their partner coughing every night, yet tells themselves, it will stop eventually, and chooses to ignore it. To those people, I want to say this clearly. We no longer live in a time when we simply grit our teeth and endure a cough. From this point on, I will share the stories of 3 older patients I have actually met in the emergency room and in the clinic. Even though they all came in because of a cough, some of them got better quickly with just one type of medicine, while others would have been in grave danger if they had waited just a little longer. As you follow their stories, you may start to sense which side your own cough is closer to. And if you stay with me until the end, you will walk away with simple lifestyle habits and emergency tips that you can start applying tonight. I hope this story becomes a small shield that protects you and your family. Now, let me begin with the story of the first patient. Among the many patients I have seen, there are older adults who suffered greatly because they brushed off their cough as nothing serious. When I think of those people, my chest still tightens a little. Today, I want to share 3 of those cases with you. I hope that, as you hear each story, you can gently ask yourself whether this might be your story, or perhaps the story of someone in your family. The first patient was a man in his late 70s. I met him for the first time in the emergency room on a mid-winter dawn. He was brought in on a stretcher, his thick, padded jacket not even properly zipped up, and his son followed behind, trying to catch his breath. The cough had already been going on for several weeks, and that night he became so short of breath that he could not sleep at all. In the end, they called 119. He said to me with difficulty, "Doctor, I thought I'd be fine. I just assumed that at my age you naturally cough more at night." That was what he said, but every time he inhaled, his chest wall drew sharply inward and the tendons in his neck stood out. I checked his oxygen saturation and blood pressure first, then placed my stethoscope on his chest. Deep in his lungs, I heard sounds like water sloshing around, and both of his lower legs were noticeably swollen. The tests showed worsening, age-related pneumonia and heart failure occurring together. He had long-standing high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease, but he had kept putting off regular checkups. All winter he had treated his ongoing cough as just old age and carried on. It was only after several days of oxygen therapy, antibiotics, and diuretics that his breathing finally grew easier. I still remember the quiet words he spoke as he held my hand tightly. "I should have come in sooner instead of just enduring it. I only ended up making my son suffer." This first case shows how important a warning sign a cough can be when blood flow, heart function, and lung function start to worsen. If a cough lingers and your shortness of breath gradually worsens, if you feel unusually breathless after climbing just a few steps, and if it gets worse when you lie down at night and eases a little, when you prop yourself up on extra pillows, then it is important to check your heart and lungs rather than dismissing it as a simple cold or just aging. The second patient I remember clearly was a woman in her early 70s. She had been told several times at a local clinic that she had bronchitis, and was repeatedly given cough syrup and phlegm medicine. During the day she could get by, but whenever she lay down at night, her throat burned and fits of dry cough poured out. Her husband, who slept next to her, kept waking up throughout the night because of it. In the consultation room, she said to me, "When I lie down, it feels like my throat is blocked and I start coughing. Drinking water doesn't really soothe it, and sometimes I feel sour liquid coming up into my throat. I'm scared that something is wrong with my lungs." I felt that looking only at a chest X-ray would not be enough, so I recommended tests to check her stomach and esophagus as well. The results showed that the main problem was not her lungs, but severe acid reflux and inflammation of the esophagus. When she lay down, acid from her stomach flowed up into the upper part of her esophagus, irritating her throat and airway, and each time that happened, a violent cough was triggered. In her case, simply increasing her cough medicine was not the answer. She had to change her lifestyle, eating less in the 3 hours before bedtime, cutting out late-night snacks and fruit, reducing coffee and carbonated drinks, and slightly elevating the head of her bed. At the same time, she needed to take medication to reduce stomach acid and calm the inflammation in her esophagus consistently for a period of time. When she came back to the clinic a few weeks later, her expression was much brighter. "Doctor, the cough that tormented me every night has gotten so much better. I was so worried thinking my lungs were badly damaged. I never imagined it was because of my stomach." This second case shows very clearly that a cough is not always purely a lung problem. If your cough worsens after meals or when you lie down, and you have symptoms like sour fluid rising in your throat, or a burning pain in the center of your chest, then your stomach and esophagus also need to be checked. The third patient I want to tell you about was a man in his early 70s. He had been taking blood pressure medication regularly, but one day, an unexplained dry cough started. He had no signs of a cold and no fever, yet the cough kept coming and going and did not improve even after several weeks. In the exam room, he told me, "I'm not short of breath and I don't feel pain, but this dry, krr kind of cough keeps coming. At night, my wife can't sleep because of it. I'm scared it might be lung cancer." I asked him when exactly the cough had started, and whether anything in his lifestyle or medications had changed around that time. Then he added, "Come to think of it, my blood pressure medicine was changed about a month ago. The pharmacy switched it, saying it was a new one. Some blood pressure medications are fairly well known for causing dry cough. As a side effect, I carefully checked the name of the drug he was taking and then explained the option of switching to a different class of medication with the same purpose. Since his chest X-ray and basic blood tests showed no major problems, it was very likely that his cough was drug-induced. When he returned a few weeks later, his face looked noticeably more at ease. Strangely enough, once I changed the medication, the cough dropped off a lot. I kept tossing and turning at night, afraid it was something serious. I wish I had known earlier that it could be from the medicine. This third case reminds us that medications can also be an important cause of cough. If a persistent cough begins after starting a new drug or changing the dose, it is wise to bring the medication packets with you and review them together with your doctor. Looking back over these 3 stories, we can see that there are several different axes intertwined behind a cough. In my clinic, I usually keep 5 in mind. First, physical activity and overall condition. As you move less, your lung capacity decreases, and phlegm tends to pool in the lower parts of the lungs. If you walk far less than before, that alone can contribute to a lingering cough. Second, hydration. When the body is dry, phlegm becomes stickier and harder to clear, so you cough more often and more forcefully. Third, blood flow and heart and lung function. Heart failure and chronic lung disease often hide behind what seems like a trivial cough, then suddenly worsen one day. Fourth, medication. Blood pressure drugs, some heart medicines, and even certain painkillers can provoke unexpected coughing. Fifth, posture. Paying attention to how your cough changes when you are standing, sitting, or lying down can give a big clue as to which organ inside is causing trouble. The main point I want to make is not complicated. Just because a cough has been there for a long time does not mean it is always harmless. And just because a cough is new does not mean it is always something frightening. What matters is knowing the characteristics of your cough. You need to take a step back and calmly observe yourself when it gets worse. What you are doing when it becomes more intense. Whether it started after you began a new medication. Whether you feel short of breath. And what happens when you lie down at night. In the clinic, I often tell my patients, the sound of your cough is important. But when, how, and how often you cough is even more important. A doctor is not someone who only listens to the sound of your cough. We listen to the changes in your daily life and your body that hide behind that cough. When you look at coughing from this perspective, you can understand the same symptom much more deeply and move at the right time. This is the kind of situation where even being one day late can be dangerous. I have repeated that sentence to myself countless times in the emergency room. When a cough first begins, it often doesn't look like a big deal. But there comes a point where it quietly crosses a line. If, at that moment, we say, let's just endure it a little longer, and spend another day or two waiting, the body can reach its limit much faster than we expect. Many older patients say things like this to me. Wouldn't I just be bothering everyone if I went to the emergency room for something like this? I can tolerate this much, so I'll watch it just one more day. I understand that feeling. Just going to the hospital is a burden. And there is a real fear of, what if they tell me it's something serious? But some coughs do not get better by simply enduring them. While you are holding on, the heart and lungs become exhausted. And inflammation can spread through the body. There is something I always emphasize in the clinic. There is a clear difference between a cough that can safely be watched at home, a cough that needs to be seen at the hospital today, and a cough that requires immediate help right now. First, let me talk about some of the most dangerous situations I often see in the emergency room. One night, a man in his late 70s was brought in on a stretcher. His caregiver spoke in a trembling voice. He's always had a bit of a cough, but now he gets so short of breath just from lying down a moment that he can't speak. Just now his face turned blue, and he could barely open his eyes, so we called right away. When I came closer, his lips and fingernails had already turned bluish, and he could barely string together a few broken words. After one or two short sentences, He had to close his eyes tightly and gasp for air, while his chest and abdomen rose and fell like big crashing waves. In a case like that, let's watch just a bit longer is not an option. The body is already sending out a full emergency signal, and there is very little that can be done outside a hospital. When a cough comes together with any of the following symptoms, I tell family members without much hesitation, at this point, you need to call an ambulance. Some of the key warning signs are: first, you are so short of breath that you cannot even finish a sentence because of the coughing. If after just 2 or 3 words you have to stop to gasp for air and cannot continue talking, your breathing is already in serious trouble. Second, your lips, fingernails, or face are turning bluish. That means your blood is not receiving enough oxygen, and in that situation, you must seek help immediately instead of waiting. Third, you suddenly develop severe chest pain along with the cough. If breathing feels like being stabbed with a knife, or if there is a heavy, pressing pain in the center of the chest at the same time, there may be an acute problem in the heart or lungs. Fourth, you are repeatedly coughing up thick, bright red blood or dark, coffee-colored blood in your phlegm. A faint streak once or twice might appear with irritation, but if blood is coming out again and again, it is not something to shrug off. Fifth, after the cough worsens, your thinking becomes cloudy, your speech becomes slurred, or you are no longer communicating clearly. This can happen when breathing is extremely strained, or when the body is not getting enough oxygen. If even one of these applies, then even if the family asks, can we just try to endure it a little longer? My answer is firm no. In a situation like this, you must seek help right away. Next, there are the standards for when you need to come to the hospital today. In other words, it may not yet be at the call an ambulance this instant level, but it is not something to keep putting off. For example, the cough has been going on for more than 3 weeks, it is getting progressively worse, and it is now disturbing your sleep at night. Some people keep trying to endure it even when every cough causes chest pain, when they are losing weight without trying, when they sweat frequently for no clear reason, and when they have a low-grade fever that comes and goes. This is especially concerning for those who have smoked for many years, or have a history of pneumonia or tuberculosis. I also frequently hear comments like this: when I lie down, the coughing gets much worse, but if I stack 2 or 3 pillows and sleep more upright, it feels a bit better. My legs swell every night, and in the morning, my breathing feels tight and heavy. In such cases, I tell them we must check the heart and lungs, even if it is not yet an emergency requiring an ambulance. Ignoring these signals for weeks can lead to a sudden and severe decline one day. Another situation is when high fever and chills come and go, together with cough, yellow phlegm, and body aches. For the past 2 days I've had a fever. I suddenly feel cold and then sweat, as if someone poured water over me. I'm short of breath and the area between my ribs hurts. When I hear this, I consider the possibility of pneumonia, and move quickly with testing. As we get older, pneumonia can worsen faster than we expect, and beyond a certain point, it becomes far too hard to manage alone at home. Now, let me talk about something many people are very curious about: what they can do at home as emergency self-care. Doctor, in these situations, do I always have to go straight to the hospital? Is there nothing I can do at home? Is it okay if I just do this much? I hear questions like this all the time. In the clinic, I usually explain a few practical steps. First, when breathing becomes difficult and the cough worsens, the priority is to raise the upper body. Do not try to tough it out lying flat. Sit up with your back supported by pillows or a chair. This allows the upper parts of the lungs to expand a bit more and can reduce the feeling of suffocation. Second, loosen anything that is constricting your body, such as tight belts, waistbands, or scarves wrapped tightly around your neck. Your chest, abdomen, and neck need to be as comfortable as possible, so that the muscles responsible for breathing can move with less strain. Third, check the air in the room. If the air is too dry, the cough can worsen. If possible, drink small sips of lukewarm water often to moisten your throat, and if the air feels stuffy, open a window slightly to let in some fresh air. Just be careful if very cold air rushes in suddenly. The cough can actually worsen, so gentle ventilation is better than a strong draft. Fourth, if you have prescription medications you normally take, avoid suddenly increasing the dose on your own. Instead, take them regularly as prescribed, and watch carefully to see whether your condition is getting better or worse over time. Any additional medication you might need should be decided in consultation with medical staff. Fifth, when the cough makes you feel like you are about to choke, it is better not to force big, deep inhalations. Instead, take small, short breaths in through the nose and exhale gently through the mouth. When we are frightened and panicked, our breathing becomes fast and shallow, and sometimes that actually reduces the amount of effective air getting into the lungs. These measures are only meant to make things a little easier until you reach the hospital or receive proper medical care. That is why I often emphasize this. Emergency self-care can buy you a bit of time, but it can never replace proper examination and diagnosis. Sometimes a worried family member will ask with anxious eyes, "Doctor, is it okay if we just do this and watch for today?" After carefully assessing the patient's condition, there are times when I must answer like this: no. In this case, you need to come to the hospital today. Yes, that means right now. A cough is a symptom that everyone experiences at some point, but some coughs are like a distress signal sent with the very last strength the body has left. Whether we choose to ignore that signal or listen closely to it is ultimately up to us. If you organize in your mind these three categories coughs you can still watch at home, coughs that must be seen at the hospital today, and coughs that require immediate help, you will be far less panicked when a real emergency comes. And if, as you hear these words, a particular face comes to mind, someone in your home who sounds just like this, I hope you will take another careful look before it is too late. The courage to ask for help at the right time can keep a life going much longer than the courage to simply endure a cough. When we talk at length about coughing like this, many people eventually ask me the same question at the end: "Doctor, then what should I actually do from now on? Please tell me something concrete." Whenever I hear that, instead of suggesting intense workouts or expensive health supplements, I start by jungling very small habits that can be repeated steadily in everyday life. They may sound like things everyone already knows, but in reality, far fewer people practice them every day than you might think. Yet these small, simple habits play a very big role in reducing cough and protecting the lungs. The older we get, the more important they become. This is more important now than it was when we were young. I usually explain things by dividing the day into morning, daytime, and night. It's easier to remember what to do when we organize it by time of day. Let's start with the morning. When they open their eyes, many older adults cough first thing. That's because, while we lie down all night, phlegm collects in the lower parts of the lungs. The air dries out, and the breathing muscles stiffen. So I recommend the following routine as your first step in the morning. First, instead of jumping straight up out of bed, roll gently onto your side. Sit up slowly, and lightly roll your shoulders and neck. Take 3 or 4 deep, comfortable breaths, as if you are slowly waking your lungs up with each inhale and exhale. Second, drink 1 or 2 glasses of lukewarm water slowly. It shouldn't be too cold or too hot. This moistens the dry throat lining and airways after the night, and helps prevent sudden, harsh bouts of dry coughing. Rather than strong, caffeinated coffee, water, barley tea, or a mild tea is more helpful. Third, open the window a little to air out the room, but if the air is very cold, be careful not to stand directly in the draft. Simply changing the stale indoor air that built up overnight is enough for many people to feel their breathing become more comfortable. Lightly wearing a mask and doing a bit of stretching by the window is also fine. The daytime routine focuses on movement, hydration, and body temperature. Just because you cough often does not mean you must lie still all day. In fact, if you move too little, your lung capacity drops and phlegm builds up more easily. Fourth, try to include at least 30 minutes to 1 hour of walking. At your own pace each day. A pace where you feel slightly short of breath, but can still carry on a conversation is usually about right. If the weather is very cold or the air pollution is bad, you can replace outdoor walking with marching in place or simple indoor exercises at home. Fifth, you need to replenish water and fluids consistently. Instead of drinking a large amount at once, it's better to drink small amounts more frequently in the morning and afternoon. A useful goal is to keep your urine from being very dark yellow, aiming instead for a lighter color. If you have heart failure or kidney disease, it is especially important to follow the amount your doctor has adjusted for you. Sixth, keeping your body from getting cold during the day is also important, especially if you sit for long periods. Use socks or a light blanket to keep your knees and ankles from becoming too cold. When the body stays cold, the airways can become more sensitive and react with more frequent and stronger coughing. And now, the night. Most older adults struggle the most with coughing at night. That's why I put special emphasis on the evening routine. Seventh, it's best to avoid overeating or late night snacks for 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. Fatty foods, spicy side dishes, and late night fruit or snacks can all make acid reflux more likely, which in turn can worsen nighttime coughing. Try to have dinner not too late, and finish the meal at a level where you feel comfortably full, not stuffed. Eighth, slightly elevating the upper body when you sleep can help. Rather than simply stacking one more pillow, support the head and shoulders so they are gently inclined. This makes it harder for stomach contents to flow back up, and allows the lungs to rest in a more comfortable position. Ninth, doing a simple breathing stretch before bed is also helpful. Sit on a chair or at the edge of the bed. Breathe in slowly through your nose, and exhale long and gently through your mouth about 10 times. While you do this, relax your shoulders and pay attention to the feeling of your chest, softly settling as you breathe out. As your tension eases, your breathing also becomes more stable. 10th, if you often wake up at night because of coughing, keep some lukewarm water by your bedside. When you wake, take a small sip to moisten your mouth and throat. Forcing yourself to cough with a dry throat can further irritate the airway and leave you with pain that lingers into the next day. Along with these routines, there are a few don'ts I really want you to remember. First, even if your cough is severe, you should avoid taking multiple over-the-counter cough suppressants or strong cough medicines on your own without a prescription. If you simply push the cough down, the phlegm and secretions that need to be cleared can remain trapped, which may actually lead to pneumonia. Second, it is very dangerous to buy antibiotics on your own and take them for a few days every time your throat feels scratchy during the changing seasons. Antibiotics must only be taken when truly needed, and for the proper length of time. Otherwise, bacteria can become resistant, and later, when you really need antibiotics, they may not work as well. Third, with smoking, the goal should not be cut back a little, but to quit altogether. As we age, all the years of smoking build up as a burden on the lungs, and even minor inflammation can trigger much stronger reactions. Even if you have smoked for a long time, the day you quit is the day you start gaining real benefit. I have heard many patients say, after quitting, my breathing sounds different now. Fourth, it is better to let go of the idea that drinking alcohol will warm the body when you have a cough. The brief sense of warmth from alcohol is misleading in reality. It weakens immunity and slows recovery, and it also disrupts the quality of your sleep. Alcohol at night especially can irritate the stomach and esophagus, making nighttime coughing worse. When you look at it this way, reducing cough and protecting the lungs is less about learning some grand secret technique, and more about making small changes to how you spend each day. A glass of water in the morning, a short walk in the daytime, a light evening meal and simple breathing stretches before Bed. When these small actions accumulate, your breathing truly does begin to change. I always tell my patients this. The doctor gives you the medicine, but you are the one who takes care of your body. For more than 20 hours a day, what you do for yourself during all that time, outside the hospital, is the most important thing. From everything we've talked about today, I hope you can choose just one thing to start practicing right away, with the hope that your cough will sound a little lighter tomorrow morning. I quietly cheer for you tonight that when you lie down in bed, your breathing will feel a bit more comfortable than it did yesterday. A few winters ago, it was early evening. As I was finishing up my outpatient clinic, the waiting numbers had almost all been called, when someone quietly opened the door and peeked in. I recognized him immediately. He was an older gentleman who had come to the emergency room months earlier because of a severe cough and shortness of breath, and had ended up being admitted. This time, he was not alone. Beside him stood his daughter, and a granddaughter who looked to be in middle school. "Doctor, we just wanted to stop by and say hello for a moment." He walked in slowly, smiling. His face looked completely different from when I had first seen him. He no longer needed so much time to catch his breath, and the way he used to get short of breath whenever he spoke was almost gone. I stood up from my chair and greeted him first. "How have you been? How is your breathing now? How about the coughing at night?" He nodded and smiled. "Doctor, ever since I did what you told me that day, my coughing has gotten much better. I raise my pillow at night, drink water often, and I haven't been skipping my medicine. These days, there are more nights when I can stretch out my legs and sleep comfortably." His daughter added a few words from the side. "In the past, the whole family used to wake up at dawn because of my father's coughing. To be honest, there were times I got irritated. Now his breathing is so much softer. It feels like the whole atmosphere at home has changed." Hearing that warmed my heart as well. I had not prescribed some powerful new drug or done a special procedure. All I had done was ask them not to treat his cough as something trivial, and to listen together to the signals his body was sending. A glass of water in the morning, raising the pillow at night, cutting back on late-night snacks, walking regularly. Because the family kept up with these small things together, the nights in that household became a little more peaceful. Then the granddaughter asked me carefully, "If I cough a lot like Grandpa, do I have to come straight to the hospital too?" Looking into her eyes, I answered slowly, "Anyone can have a cough, but if it lasts a long time and keeps getting worse, it is important to find out why. And rather than worrying all by yourself, the most important thing is to talk it over with the adults around you, like you are doing now." As the family left the consultation room that day, they bowed their heads again and again in thanks. Even after the door closed, I sat there for a while, thinking, this is the same man who once had to come to the emergency room because of a cough. And now he is walking while holding his granddaughter's hand and smiling. As a doctor, whenever I see scenes like that, I am reminded that the explanations and lifestyle advice I give are not only caring for one person's body, but also helping to care for the hearts of the family around them. When I see older patients in clinic, many of them say something like this: "I can handle my own pain, but I am afraid of becoming a burden to my children." That is why, when I talk about cough, I always think of the family as well. The spouse who listens to the coughing every night, the children and grandchildren in the next room who worry in silence, the son or daughter far away who can only call to ask how things are. One person's cough is ultimately connected to the life of the entire family. Perhaps among those of you listening now, there are many who think of your family before yourselves. I can manage even if it is hard for me, but I do not want to worry the kids, so I do not say anything. I feel like going to the hospital and getting checkups will just cost money and cause trouble for everyone. Because of feelings like these, people often hide that they are unwell or endure a long-lasting cough without saying a word. I have seen that far more often than I would like. But quietly, I want to say this: enduring it does not make things easier for your family. In fact, They feel more at ease when you tell them in time what is going on. The longer a cough goes on, and the less we know about its cause, the bigger the worry grows. Family members may try not to show it outwardly, but when they lie down at night, thoughts like these come to them. What if it is something serious? What if it suddenly gets worse one day? That is why simply finding the courage to come to the hospital and hear from the tests, "This is where things stand right now," can greatly reduce the anxiety of the entire family. Even when the results are not very good, knowing that we are doing everything we can gives everyone strength. Sometimes, in the middle of a conversation, I hear confessions like this: "Doctor, actually the cough has been going on for over a month. But I did not tell my kid. I did not want them to worry." When I hear that, I sigh quietly inside and say, "I am glad you told me now." Worries do not disappear just because we hide them. Once we share them, that is when we can start moving toward a solution. There is something I would like to ask of you, who are listening to this audiobook. If there was any part of what you heard today that made you think, "That sounds like my family," I hope you will not keep it only in your heart, but share it with your loved ones. Lately I have been coughing more at night. I am thinking of going to the hospital to get it checked. They say that if a cough lasts a long time, you should not just endure it, you should find out why. Just bringing it up in a simple, relaxed way like that is already the first step. And one more thing, if someone's face comes to mind as you listen to this, it would be a kindness to quietly send this story to them. A friend who coughs every night. A sibling who keeps clearing their throat in the living room. Parents who brush it off with, "That is just what happens when you get old." Try listening to this program once. It says there is no harm in getting things checked at least once. That one sentence can sometimes lead to a very big change. Over many years moving between the clinic and the emergency room, I have seen countless stories hidden behind coughs. Some people came to the hospital in time and were able to finish treatment easily and go back home. Others I watched with a heavy heart, thinking, if only they had come a little sooner. From those experiences, there is one thing I have come to know for sure. The way we respond to a cough can change the course of our life from here on. I hope that what we have shared during our time together today will leave at least one small guideline in your life. Is this something I can safely let pass? Or is this something I should no longer put off? If you keep that question tucked away in a corner of your mind, it may one day help protect you and your family at an important moment. If you are nodding your head as you listen now, I hope that before you fall asleep tonight, you will gently ask yourself these questions. Have I just been enduring my cough without doing anything about it? Am I being honest with the people I love about the signals my body is sending? Whatever your answer is, it is all right. What matters is that from this moment on, things can begin to change little by little. I hope you will take even a small step in the direction of easier breathing and a lighter life. As I bring this story to a close, there is one last thing I must say. This content is general information for educational purposes and does not replace medical advice. If you develop new symptoms or feel a change that is different from what you usually experience, please consult your local medical facility or your physician directly. From here, I quietly wish that your breathing will feel a little more comfortable today than it did yesterday, and that tomorrow will feel lighter than today.